All right, let's get right into it. When we hear the word motherhood, what comes to mind? Probably things like protection, comfort, that special unbreakable bond, right? Well, what if an entire society flipped that idea on its head? Today, we're diving into the pretty intense world of ancient Sparta, a place where the nursery wasn't a sanctuary at all. Nope, it was more like the first brutal training ground for creating a warrior. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Can you imagine a world where raising a child isn't about nurturing a unique person, but building a component? Like a gear in a machine? A machine for the state? That one question right there, it just completely shatters our modern idea of parenting. And honestly, it's the absolute key to unlocking how Sparta worked. And when you see it laid out like this, the difference is, well, it's just night and day, isn't it? In one corner, you've got everything we value: safety, comfort, love. And in the other corner, the Spartan way: hardship, discipline, and the state. The Spartan nursery wasn't a home in any way we'd recognize it. It was basically the first stop on an assembly line for making soldiers. Yeah, and that's exactly why calling it a psychological forge is just perfect. Because that's what it was. A Spartan mother wasn't just raising her son, oh no. She was manufacturing a very specific kind of person. She was the blacksmith, and pressure and hardship were her hammer and anvil, shaping that child right from the moment he was born. And here's the bottom line. The end product was all that mattered. The state had a need. It needed unyielding, tough, totally loyal soldiers, basically living shields for Sparta. And the thinking was that whole process had to start right there in the cradle. And the mother? She was the master craftsman in charge of the job. So you can see how this completely redefines what motherhood even is. In Sparta, it wasn't some personal, private bond. It was a public service. In fact, it was a woman's most important duty to the state. Her home, even her own body, they were seen as instruments for the good of Sparta. There's actually a term for this: civic motherhood. It means her entire identity as a mother was tied directly to Sparta's military might. Her job wasn't just producing sons. The really crucial part was hardening them. That was her biggest, most fundamental contribution to her society. And get this phrase: weaponized emotional distance. Just think about that. This wasn't accidental neglect or bad parenting. It was a strategy, a tool, a weapon. The mother would intentionally pull back, creating this emotional void. And guess who stepped in to fill it? The state. The state became the real parent, the main source of identity for that child. Okay, so that's the big idea. But how did they actually do it on a day-to-day basis? Well, this wasn't just random cruelty. Not at all. It was a system. A series of deliberate rituals designed to temper a child like a blacksmith tempers steel. And it started, literally, from the moment they were born. So, right from day one, the training kicks in. First off, no swaddling. They believed wrapping a baby up tightly made them weak and even deformed. Step 2, get them used to the dark. Infants would be left alone in darkness to, just get over being afraid. And third, they were taught to be quiet, to be content with what they had. No crying, no fussing, no being needy. And you can see the cold, hard logic behind every single one of these rituals, can't you? Not swaddling, that was about building physical toughness from the get-go. Leaving them in the dark, that was an exercise in extinguishing the fear of being alone. And that emotional distance we talked about, well, that was the masterstroke. That was all about cutting the cord to the family so you could forge an unbreakable one to Sparta instead. So, after years and years of this, a process that, by the way, just gets more intense with the state education system called the agoge, you get the final product: the perfect Spartan warrior. This is a man who doesn't see himself as a son or a brother or a husband first. He sees himself as a living, breathing piece of Sparta's armor. And from the state's perspective, this is the ultimate win. That natural biological bond that every child has with their parent, it gets systematically dismantled, rewired. And what replaces it is this manufactured but somehow even more powerful bond between the man and the state. Yeah, the whole entire system was designed with one goal in mind: loyalty to one and only one entity. Not his mother, not his father, not even himself. His entire life, his whole being, belonged to Sparta. Period. Okay, so why are we talking about this? Why does this ancient, frankly brutal system matter today? Because it slams us right into one of the biggest questions there is: nature versus nurture. How much of who we are is just built in and how much is programmed by our culture. I mean, you could say the Spartans ran this massive, centuries-long experiment to see just how far you could push the nurture side of things. All right, so let's just pull this all together. What are the big takeaways here? First, Spartan motherhood wasn't a private role, it was a job for the state. Second, they used very specific psychological tricks or rituals to harden kids from the moment they were born. Third, that emotional coldness wasn't a bug, it was a feature, a tool to ensure loyalty belonged to the state. And finally, the whole point of it all was to forge a human weapon, not to raise a son. And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on, doesn't it? The Spartans were convinced that even something as fundamental as a mother's instinct could be totally reshaped, repurposed, even aimed like a weapon. And it really makes you stop and think, right? Which of our own basic instincts are really, truly ours? And how many of them are just products of the culture we happen to live in?